Coming up next on A1 Forever Sports, former Cincinnati Bengals defensive lineman Ken Johnson. Let's get into it.
A1, A1, A1. Yeah, truly. Cooler and I'm flyer too. Jam. Cooler and I'm flyer too.
What's good, everybody? Welcome back to the show that's cooler and flyer too. A1 Forever Sports. Who am I? Chris Tipmore. Why settle for less when you can have more with a vision? And be generational because there's always time to be. And with that in mind, I have an exclusive guest joining me today for an interview. Former Cincinnati Bengals defensive tackle, Ken Johnson. All right. So just like I said, former Cincinnati Bengals defensive tackle and a man of God, Elder Ken Johnson. How you doing,
Thank you.
sir?
I'm doing real good. Thank you for asking.
No,
Just
no,
taking it one day at a time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. No problem at all. I just know it's crazy because if I'm not mistaken, before your football career, you were about to play basketball, huh?
Right. That's what I played in college at Indiana University was basketball. In fact, I was drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers, but opted to go into football.
Now, what opted you to go into football? What was better about football over basketball for you?
Well, what happened, like in anyone's career, you have ups and downs. And my senior year, instead of, things going well, they went bad. Not to the point where, they didn't draft me, but, I wasn't on my, A game at the time. And the reason why was that I had really drifted away from God and kind of got into the party scene and, didn't realize it. But, whenever you stray away from God, there's a pitfall or something that to remind you need to get back.
Right.
So my senior year was a disappointing year for me. And so out of that situation, I got an opportunity one day. I got a phone call from the Dallas Cowboys, and they were at IU looking at some football players that they were considering, I guess, drafting or possibly, signing up. And for some reason, they called me and wanted to meet me. But
Hey.
I had played, I had played high school football, and I was all state. And so, anyway, to make a long story short, I went down to visit them. They were at the football arena, and so the first thing they wanted me to do was run a 40-yard dash. Now, the 40-yard dash is the measuring stick to really see whether an athlete has the speed or quickness to, possibly try out for any team.
Correct.
And so they turned me about 4.8, I think. And they were impressed. They said, Ken, we'd like to sign you. And, I didn't think anything of it at first, but then they offered some bonus money. Kind of got my attention when they mentioned
There you go.
that.
There you go.
And so, yeah. So it's always a way, and people get your attention, especially with money. But from there, I started working out with weights. I had never lifted weights being a basketball player at that time. They didn't lift a lot of weights. They thought weights would tighten you up and your, shot wouldn't be as effective.
Right.
But anyway, I started lifting weights, and in 3 months, I was bench pressing over 400 pounds.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I said, hey, I'm going to call Dallas Cowboys and maybe give it a try, and see what happens. And so I went there and, stayed there. And back to the last cut, they wanted to really put me on they had a reserve team. They called it the taxi team at that time. And that was it. Just, guys who were, sort of like today, they have
Like the practice squad?
Yeah, practice squad. Okay. And so, from there, but when they tried to do that, Cincinnati had, in fact, heard about me too. So they picked me up on waivers. I went to Cincinnati, and that was it for the next 8 years.
Yes.
So it was how God gave me that second chance, because I prayed to God to, really to work things out for me. Kind of got my spiritual life back at that point. And so he opened the door, and actually was amazed how things happened. And so I went into football from that situation.
Sounds good. That's actually great. So Cincinnati picks you up, you hit the facility, you do all your work, you get on the field. I want to know how. I mean, well, we already know the game back then was different than how it is now, but
Right.
how was it playing against guys like Franco Harris or Terry Bradshaw, just some of the greats that was back then, just being actually like, hey, that's who that really is. Like that's him, and I'm
Yeah,
going against him.
exactly. Well, at that time they wasn't superstars like they became. They were just like me trying to make it and, do well. But playing against Pittsburgh, who was one of our, competitors, and in our conference, it
Mm-hmm.
was always a big game. And so, and then most of the time was a televised game. So,
Definitely.
I would always get up for those big games like Pittsburgh or Houston, even Cleveland, because all those teams were in our divisions.
Right.
But it was nice because all of a sudden, you were on national television. People, saw you. People knew you. You had interviews and all that.
Right.
So it was pretty exciting, especially for that time. And think about this, back in the early 70s, there
Mhm.
weren't a lot of black pro football players. So they used to put us in a magazine called Ebony. I don't know whether you remember that.
Oh, I do. I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, they used to put all the black players who made it in pro sports in Ebony, so people would, recognize them. So that was amazing at that time, and so to play, and I played 8 years. It was really fantastic.
Right. Right. So as far as like in those 8 year span, like if there's anything, like any play, any game, or anything that you wish you could just do over or relive.
Well, it's amazing because, after playing the game, all those years, all certain plays come back to you, and you think, man, if I had did this particular technique, I would have made a big play. But I made some real big plays. I was most valuable player in a game against Pittsburgh Steelers. We beat them, and on the last, I think it was last 48 seconds, I sacked Terry Bradshaw and kept them from, beating us because they were driving trying to beat us. And I sacked them, and that really changed the game. And we
Oh,
won.
oh man,
But
I know that felt great
oh
getting
yeah,
back on
yeah,
over here.
yeah, it was national television too, and so it was big time. But it was amazing because it was like God had me planned for that because He had a purpose for all of it. And
Right.
when I look back at how it all happened. When I was growing up, I used to pour concrete. My father had a contract. He was a contractor, and he would build patios and put down driveways, and he had me helping him when I was like 12 years old.
Oh,
So naturally, yeah, the strength was already there when, I started bench pressing like 400 pounds because,
definitely.
I grew up pouring concrete. And so, you know, God always, uh, is preparing you for what He has, in your life in the future. And so
Right.
He gave me that strength to, helping my father and all that work, that I had the strength to play sports and be effective. So you see that looking back.
Right. Right. Right.
So He gives you a testimony so that you can share people. In fact, he did some tremendous things in my life. One of the biggest keys in my life was my parents. My mother taught me to pray every night before I got in bed.
Right.
And I would, ask God early in my, growing up days, like in my elementary period, to help me be successful, because that was one of my prayers. And then I made a vow to God when I was 15. I said, God, if you help me be a good athlete and do well, I said, whatever you want me to do in life, I'll do it. I made that vow to God, and I was 15 years old.
That's a big vow at that age too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, God wants us to know Him early as possible in our journey,
Right.
because He has something He, wants us about Him, and then He wants us to communicate and have that personal relationship. And so that started really like in elementary school with me.
Right.
And from there, in fact, I prayed one night to be 6'6". I said, God, I'd like to be 6'6". When I finished high school, I was all state in football, all state in basketball. I was 6'6". So
Man,
he answered every one of my prayers. And why did he do that? So that I could know him, so that I could, trust him and believe in him. So that's what, all that happened out of the fact that God had that plan and had that purpose already, for me. And I didn't realize it at the time, but, I followed through in it. So it worked out perfect.
yeah, it sounds like it, man. Sounds like I just didn't pray hard enough, because I sure prayed to be 6'3" and I ain't make
You didn't
it.
make that.
I ain't make it, man. I got
Yeah,
close to
well,
6 foot, but
actually, yeah, my father, in fact, this was I had a stepfather who raised me. I didn't meet my biological father till I was in pro football.
oh
And
wow.
when I met my biological father, he was 6'5". So it was already there.
Oh,
But,
got you, got you. Makes
but
the world.
yeah, so it's amazing how God, the Bible says if we delight in the Lord, He'll give us the desires of our heart. And so that's exactly what happened, growing up. In, the period when I grew up, especially in the South. I was born in Birmingham, Alabama. And they used to call it Birmingham, because you had all the,
Come on now.
yeah, man, you had all the racial tension back then. That was like, in the 60s and early, yeah, that was the Civil Rights Day, that was all about,
Definitely.
people marching and stuff. So anyway, we were taught every night to pray, because, Black kids were suspects, in terms of
Yeah,
our
I already
environment.
know what you mean. Yep, I already know
Yeah,
what you
yeah, exactly. So that's how we begin to pray and develop that prayer life. And through that, God begin to speak in our lives.
mean. Right. Okay. So, all right. I gotta get back to a football question. Since you played for the Cincinnati Bengals, back 1970 to 77, pretty much an alumni. How do you feel about today's Cincinnati Bengals?
Well, they're a good team. In fact, back then we had a quarterback named Ken Anderson. He was a really good quarterback also.
Mm-hmm.
And this kid they have now, Burrows, he's a very good quarterback. In fact, I think he's one of the best in the league right now. And I think to really have a good team, you got to have a good quarterback.
100.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's the difference in terms of today. We had a good quarterback, but he wasn't like among the top of the
Right.
league at the time. You had Terry Bradshaw, Brian Tarkenton, you
Right.
had James. Those are some of the superstars, and they were the best. And they, took their team to the Super Bowl. And so, Ken Anderson was good. In fact, we, were in the playoffs, several times. And really, our head coach, his name was Paul Brown, and he was called Godfather of football, because Paul Brown, he developed the messenger guard, and he developed the classroom, study and all that. And so he was an innovator, and he did a lot to, expand the game and help the game grow.
Definitely. 100%.
Mhm. Exactly.
Yes. Well, okay. So, all right, you like Joe Burrow, you like the new Cincinnati Bengals. What do you feel like they need, man? Like, what do they need to get over the hump? I mean, I know it's tough in the AFC. Period. It's always been tough in the AFC.
Right.
But
Well, what they really need is some good linemen to protect Burrows.
yeah.
And because if he has any time, team is in trouble because he's got some great receivers.
Mhm.
But, uh, the linemen are not, protecting him as well as he should be protected. And he don't get the time he really needs to be as effective as he could be. So that's the only thing that's really lacking that I think right now. They need a better offensive line to protect Burrows.
You're right. They definitely do. I believe they need to focus completely on their offensive line because it showed
Mm-hmm.
the past 2 seasons. You think about it, it's really shown. Even
Yeah.
like he gets killed. What that Titan game last year? I think what he had like got sacked like 10 times, 9 times,
Yeah, yeah,
and it's
yeah.
crazy because they
Yeah,
still won.
yeah. And that's just lets you know how good he is because he has to get rid of the ball very quickly because he don't have that much time. You
Right.
give him a little time, and he's
He gonna carve you up.
oh, he'll tear you to pieces. Yeah,
Yes, sir.
yeah. So he's a good quarterback. But if they get some better offensive linemen, I think they definitely be unbeatable in a sense
Mm.
because they, when they beat Buffalo, see, Buffalo couldn't get to him because it was snowing and all that, and guys that couldn't get much traction. So he had a little bit more time, and he picked them apart.
Right. And also, I like to admit too that they didn't have Von Miller, so that also helped too.
Yeah, that did. Now that helped a lot.
That's a beast
So,
right there.
oh yeah, that was really. I mean, I think for a defensive lineman, snow and all that, you can't get that great takeoff like you need to really get that to that
Yeah, that
quarterback.
acceleration. You
Yeah,
know.
exactly. Yeah, you going you just can't get that traction, and
Mm.
I think that's what was missing from Bill. So he picked
Hey
them
man, he
apart.
picked them apart too. Yeah, he tore them
Yeah,
up. He tore
yeah,
them up,
he
and
made them
that's
look like some schoolyard kids.
right. And that's why I also saying I'm like, hey man, Mahomes and Burrow, that right there is the matchup. I can't put Josh Allen in it.
Right.
I can't put what's my man name? Justin Herbert, none of those guys in there. I
Yeah.
have one more question for you.
Okay.
Do you remember giving me this?
Man, I've been giving so many of those things out, man. I've given over a million. See, you know, I worked for a ministry called Sports World when
Mm-hmm.
I retired, and I've spoken in about over 3,000 schools,
Right.
and I've spoken over to about 3 million kids, really, in terms of so many. And so it's just, it's amazing because I got a couple other cards like that too. And they're different, a little different. I got a football card that they gave me from Tops. And so
Mhm.
I've signed all those cards for the last 30, 35 years, to 40 years, man. Because once I retired from football, I started traveling around the country, parts of the world, and, ministry. And, kind of telling my story, just like, I shared a little bit about it. And so from there, man, God just opened the doors for me to go all over. And I did that for like I said, about 40 years. And I still do it.
Right, man. It's like I say, it's a beautiful thing. I know you actually gave me that at the Peach Bowl breakfast in Atlanta when I was a kid.
You kidding me?
Yep, I still remember it. I still remember it.
Okay. Okay. Well, man, that tells me something, man, that, God, really, used me in that sense, man, because I remember the Peach Bowl. Yeah, I remember when I was there. And in fact, we started the Peach Bowl breakfast with FCA. I started, that with them. And from there, we started the chapel. They call them, I'm trying to think what we call the FCA clubs in the schools.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's just part of, what I did too.
Oh yeah, man. I'm gonna have to try to get this thing signed one of these days, man.
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
always kept it. I'm a collector anyway, so
yeah, yeah.
especially like
Well,
sports memorabilia and everything. So
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
before I had
appreciate
this
that,
interview,
man.
yeah, before I had this interview, I was like, hold on, where is it? I know it's in here. I was like, and I have things like organized like by teams, like all the players that I have by teams. So I said, hold on,
Uh-huh.
Cincinnati. Where's Cincinnati?
You're right.
And then I
That's
found it.
amazing.
Then boom, I was like, there it is. I was like, he
Yeah,
trip when he see this.
yeah. I mean, that's amazing, man. It is because like I said, I've been all over the world, giving out cards and speaking to people. I've been to South Africa and down in the Bahamas and all those areas.
Yeah, man, that's a beautiful thing, man. God really has worked for you, and
Yeah.
do a lot of favor to be able to do a lot of great things. Because I mean, it's beautiful to be able to travel the world. I'm definitely trying to travel the world myself and be as
Hmm.
I possibly can, help people. I want to help as many
Exactly.
people as I possibly can. I have so many ideas in my head that as soon
That's
as
good
I
stuff.
get the platform and as soon as I get so just in the right situations with the right people, I mean, I really plan on doing a lot of big things out here. Seriously.
Man, that sounds great, man. And hey, you can do it, man. It's just you know, make up your mind and seek God and let him lead you. Because he'll definitely, open doors for you.
Definitely, 100%. Definitely. I mean, I'm so glad, thank you for taking the time out to have a few minutes with me on this interview, man. I definitely wanted to get your thoughts about the Bengals and just how things were back in the old school football days. And,
Oh yeah, that's back in the day. Yeah.
yes, sir, man. So I really thank you for doing this for me.
No
You've been
problem.
great. You've been great. And hopefully we'll speak again soon.
Okay, just give me a holler, give me a call. If I still in pain,
Okay, now. All right. Well, you had enjoy the rest of your day and
all
peace and
right.
blessings to you.
Okay, you too. You
Yes,
too.
sir.
The same to you. God bless.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. Bye bye.
Bye bye. That was former Cincinnati Bengals defensive tackle and man of God, Elder Ken Johnson. Definitely an exclusive interview, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time out to watch this interview and watch my growth. All right. Until next time, peace and blessings to you. Why settle for less when you can have more with the vision? Be generational because it's always time to be. The show that is cooler and fly too. A1 Forever Sports. And who is he?
A1. 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 Yeah, truly. Cooler and I'm flyer too. Jam.